Whoa, guys, we're back yet again for another Spooktober episode of We Watch Shudder. My name is JD. Who's here with me?
It's Michelle!
Yay! It's still
Yay!
Michelle after all this time. I haven't run her
always
off yet.
Michelle. It's always
We haven't ruined each other's lives yet with this horror movie podcast. We record ostensibly once a week, sometimes twice a week.
I mean, there's still 2 months before this episode comes out, so maybe by then we'll have ruined each
there's
other's
probably
lives.
going to be a movie drop somewhere right about mid-September that we have such a huge argument about that nobody's ever actually going to hear any of these. But, you know, maybe...
I am definitely concerned about that. I'm not a confrontational person, so our first debate that we had on this show, I think it was Prevenge, and I was like, oh god, I don't like fighting, but you're so wrong.
Well, I think we might...
I know.
We might have an interesting scenario going on today as well.
I know.
So we're talking about, as we have been doing, normally we talk about the new release, original and exclusive Shudder movies. For October, we're going back and picking up some titles that we missed that were released before we started the show. And today we're talking about one of those titles. This is a movie called Lucky from 2020, I believe, maybe 2021.
Yes.
I believe originally got a festival release in 2020 and was released on Shudder in 2021, I believe. Anyway, as we do, we're going to read the description of the film from the Shudder website. And here it is. This one's called Lucky. May, a self-help author with all the answers, suddenly finds herself stalked by a masked man who mysteriously reappears every night, even when she kills him. May struggles to get help from the people around her as she fights to stay alive. Is this paranoia, or is she doomed to accept her new reality? A Shudder original. Michelle.
Yeah.
So, normally I would ask you for your spoiler-free thoughts, but we already have a little behind-the-scenes idea of what's going on here. So, I'm going to point out right away that my thoughts on this movie are I fucking love it. I think it's really, really, really great and unique and interesting and uses a lot of horror movie elements in some pretty unique ways to get its message across. I thought it was a pretty effective telling of that message. I enjoyed this movie so much that I actually put it on my top 10 films of 2021. It was in the number 10 spot, right on the edge of the list. But that's how I felt about this film. This film gets a 5-skull rating from me, and even after watching it again, I still think it does. I love this movie. That's my thoughts on the film Lucky. Michelle, where do you come down on this movie? I've been waiting for this.
I know, because you don't fully know my opinion. I will say, first off, the very first time I watched this movie, it would have gotten a 1 skull out of 5 for me.
Wow.
And if we had done this episode that first time, it would have been terrible. Terrible review. However, we will discuss it more in the spoiler section.
Right.
Watching it a second time after a year has passed and I have had time to ruminate, I still did not love it, but I will bump it up and give it a 3 out of 5.
All right,
and I have very specific reasons why.
So that's a 3 out of 5 from Michelle, a 5 out of 5 from me. Those of you who are good at math know that that's a 4-skull average, which is frankly a pretty solid average for a movie here on We Watch Shudder. And it's usually how it goes. Is one of us is a big fan, and the other one, really not. If you want to go, just to give you a quick, so the movie is very much about. I should warn you if you haven't seen it and you want to go watch it. It does have a lot of themes of domestic violence and man-on-woman violence and that sort of thing. That's heavily steeped in those themes. And there are some aggressive violent scenes here, so if that sort of thing is troubling to you, you may want to go in with that well in mind. Might not exactly be the movie for you. But otherwise, yeah, if you want to check it out before we really dig into it, this is where you're going to want to go do that. All right, gave him the chance to do that. So, Michelle, please tell me what you didn't like so much about this movie, because I thought it was a brilliant reimagining of a sort of slasher film with a completely different context.
Yes. So, the main thing that it came down to both the first time I watched it and then the second time once I had time to process and rewatching it again, it is not enjoyable for me to watch this. It is irritating. It is deliberately annoying to the point that it is uncomfortable. And I think that is partially because of life experiences where watching this and seeing the helplessness, I hated watching it the first time.
Okay.
Also, the first time that I watched it, I guess this is the spoiler section, so we can talk about it.
Yeah.
But the message is kind of, like you said, man on woman violence and women, existing and men kind of tearing them down, to put it lightly. And at the time that I watched this, I don't remember what exactly was going on, but there was definitely a lot of stuff in the news with those same kind of themes. And it felt like this was trying to capitalize off of that a lot more than I have now, with Separation and reading more from the creator. It felt like it was trying to capitalize and make a point more than it was trying to be a good movie. I have since realized that this was her way of getting out the creator and the star, whose name I have
Bria
forgotten.
Grant. It's right in front of me here. Yeah, don't worry. I didn't just remember that. It's literally right in front of my face.
Good. I was gonna go look. But this was her own way of getting out her frustrations about, the same kind of message. And knowing that definitely was reassuring. Because at the time, you don't know what the creators are doing, and it felt like capitalizing rather than, really relating to an issue.
Yeah, that's interesting because I know what you're saying, and I've had that experience many times before, obviously, where I feel like it feels exploitational, right? Like that's where that terminology comes from. I didn't get that from this movie. The first time I saw it, I don't know. I just got an impression from it that this isn't exploitational. This is timely. This is a movie that's happening now, not because it's trying to take advantage of the climate right now, but because I think it felt like now was the right time to do it.
Exactly, and I do understand that now. That was part of my low score the first time. Now I completely get it. It was just so saturated at that time that everything felt like it was trying to pander, and that's not the movie's fault. That was bad timing.
Sure.
And at that moment, but somehow good timing.
I also definitely relate to what you're saying about how a lot of it just being difficult to watch. Because I imagine for a lot of women, this movie is going to be difficult to watch, at least more difficult than it was for me, because, I mean, that's like the general thrust of this movie is men are out there just being incredibly violent to women all the time, and everybody just doesn't take it seriously at all, right? Like, there's this beautiful sequence right there in the middle of the film where she's sitting after about like the fourth or fifth attack from this random dude who shows up, and she kills him, and then he just disappears, and then he comes back again, and everybody thinks she's crazy, or everybody thinks she might be covering up for her husband, and that wonderful scene where there's like 4 different people all coming at her at once, and the one dude just kind of breaks out in song at one point. I felt
that is my favorite part.
Yes,
of the movie.
I felt like it did an incredible job of creating this experience where I think May, the character, genuinely starts to believe herself that she might actually be crazy. Like they start I thought it did an incredible job of presenting that experience of knowing that this is happening, of knowing that there's and nobody will take you seriously to the point where you start to doubt your own sanity. I thought it did that really, really, really well.
I am curious. Did you understand from the very beginning what was happening, what the overall message was?
No, I had an idea as soon as it started, and there's actually something else about it that I didn't pick up on the first time I watched it. I watched it a couple of times way back when, in late
Hmm.
December, I believe, is when I first saw it. And then I didn't see it again until we rewatched movies for recording here. And there's an element in the film that I didn't catch those first couple of times that adds a whole nother layer to it. But no, I didn't understand entirely. There was a period where I thought the killer was some sort of psychological manifestation of her husband. I was part of that team. I was like, okay, maybe that's what's
Hmm.
going on. I dropped that very quickly. I think it was about that scene where she suddenly starts having that weird interaction with all of those people at the same time,
Hmm.
when it really started cementing in my head what this was about. And then when you get to the crazy like psychotic break sequence where she's in the parking garage again and she's with her friend and they're being chased by multiple masked psychopaths, and each one has their own unique masked psychopath, and they're bumping into to other people, and they're having this discussion about like if this is just how it is now or if there's anything we can do. It all slowly, until when they finally get to the end, and she pulls the mask off. I'm not typically a big, like, I guess I shouldn't say I'm not a fan of it, but that kind of last shot reveal is such a risky thing, right? Because you're putting so much weight on that one moment of the movie that it's either going to work or it's not, and it's probably going to make or break the movie for a lot of people. I got it. I liked what it was trying to say. I thought the effect was good enough that it didn't take me out of it, and I really enjoyed how it ended. How did that work for you?
We had entirely different experiences of this movie. I mean, going back to the first time viewing it, because obviously I'm in on it now. Uh, the first couple, I can't say first couple of minutes. I guess like the second time she gets attacked, I immediately went, "Oh, this is a metaphor," and I get it, and I understand. So I was viewing it through that lens, and partially like I was so irritated on her behalf, and I also knew it was a metaphor, and so there is no big payoff for me.
Sure.
And that reveal at the end I hated
Really?
because yeah, I really didn't like it, because I was like, I sat through this whole movie and that's it, and I'm so irritated, and there was nothing to pay off for me. So that's why I think I had such a visceral reaction the first time, because I was like, I watched this whole thing and it was uncomfortable and I didn't like it at all. There were certain scenes that I did find entertaining, like the parking garage, the people talking around her. One that I really liked, and I think more of this would have changed my experience of it, is that I wish that there had been more cryptic scenes, like where everything they're saying has a double meaning and you're trying to piece that together. So like when she sees the I can't remember the exact dialogue, but it's when she's talking to, I can't remember the woman, but the person she goes to stay in their house
Okay.
with the son, when she goes to stay with them, and she sees a scar on her back and she's like, "Oh, everybody has this," or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Those kind of scenes where it's so overtly cryptic and you start reading into the dialogue a lot more are really parts that I enjoyed, and I wish there had been more of that and less of, a normal life with some weird stuff happening. If
Sure.
everything could have been like a double meaning when you're looking back in hindsight,
Yeah.
it would have been much
And
more
yeah,
enjoyable
and
to me.
so to talk about a couple of points that you mentioned there. Firstly, like that's definitely one of the risks you run with a certain type of horror movie is, you're trying to do things that make people uncomfortable, right? We've talked about this. I have problems with
Yep.
things that involve
Yep.
children. I have real difficulty
Hmm.
with that, and it's the kind of thing that you take that risk with a movie like that, and for some people it's going to work, and
Yep.
for some people it's not. And so I totally understand that, how it could be the kind of thing where it's not, it's too uncomfortable because of your perspective, right? And I get that.
Hmm.
I think the movie, in a lot of ways, I think I enjoyed it more because I felt like I learned something more about just the overall nature of the female experience from the movie. And so I think that's why I maybe have some more value from it, is because I am a kind of person who could stand to learn or hear what this movie is trying to say. Whereas you are a person who is probably already well aware of everything this movie is trying to say.
Yeah, and that was one of my notes, is that there are going to be people like me who are in on it immediately, and there's just no big takeaway. There's no big payoff, and I don't really think that's the movie's fault. I think it's just a risk that it takes. Like you said,
Right.
that's why I'm kind of glad we didn't watch this and then record an episode the first time I saw it, because in hindsight I was very harsh. Like I said, it would have been 1 out of 5 because I was so annoyed with no payoff. And now it's like, no, I understand. I respect it a lot more. I've had time
Yeah.
to, get over
It's
my annoyance.
It's a lot more allegorical than a lot of the horror movies that I tend to enjoy. I think very obviously one of the reasons I also really got into this is, again, we've talked about it before, I tend to really enjoy just the slasher form. And I thought, again, that this was an interesting inversion of that slasher form. The one thing that I did want to talk about, because you talk about those cryptic things, and this is that thing that I mentioned just a little while ago where I didn't notice it the first couple of times, and I did this time around. There's a scene later in the film where she's talking, I believe, to her psychiatrist, and he says something about how, like, talking about when this started, and he mentions, like, well, it started in the parking garage, right? And if we think back to the beginning of the film, there is a scene where she's just leaving her book agent's office and she's in that parking garage. And I had never put it together, but here's what happens in that parking garage. She's walking to her car, and in the distance, she hears someone else scream. And she pauses for a moment, and then she just goes about her life. And that's where everything starts to fall apart. And then there's that, and that, seeing that and catching that this time brought so much more weight to that later sequence in the garage where she's arguing back and forth with the other lady about, like, whether or not there's any point in trying to fight it, or if this is just the new reality now and we have to deal with it. I feel like there's a certain amount of I don't even know how to take that, really. It's something that I would love to sit down with Brea Grant as the writer of this film and ask if there's actually something there, because it feels like there's almost this thread of guilt in that like a part of this is that we also don't act and believe each other enough. Believe each other, I think, is what I want to emphasize there. And so I don't know, but I thought that was an interesting element that definitely had they don't talk about it at all. They just mention it. And I thought that added some really interesting and somewhat cryptic implications. Did you catch any of that?
I was about to say I did not catch that, but I do like what you're saying, and I completely agree that if that was intentional, it's very smart, because it's saying, that we don't really care and we're kind of bystanders until it happens to us.
Right.
Would be kind of the message that I could take away from that if it's deliberate. And I do think that's a pretty good element to include if deliberate.
I was so afraid that we were going to come into this episode and you were going to tell me that I was just like totally wrong about what my impressions of this movie were, and that it's not nearly as empowering as I seem to think it was. But no, I totally get it now. I can definitely, when I first saw this film, I told several of my female friends about it because of the message it presents and what it's talking about here, and made sure to let them know, like, you need to understand, like, this is not super gory or super, like, incredible violent, but the type of violence it is, you need to to be really careful with. And I think that's an important thing to play out, but I totally understand how this might be too much or not the right movie for some people.
Yeah, and it's not even like the horrifying element that was too much for me. It was just irritating. Like I can't put it like a better way because it was just so annoying to watch this going on and knowing what's happening. Like it's just not enjoyable for me.
Right. It's
one really weird I do have to also comment that I was really looking forward to this episode because I knew that you were dreading it and I knew how you felt about this movie.
You're the worst.
I know, but we don't talk about like the movies until we're recording.
We don't talk about Lucky Club until we talk about Lucky Club.
Exactly, and if it's your first time at Lucky Club, you have to fight a man in a parking garage. I would lose
with a creepy mask who doesn't even have a uniform face.
Yeah, I have spaghetti arms. I would be no use. But one thing that I'm kind of curious about, so I happened to watch another movie that I do like that has a really heavy message and is completely cryptic, and I happened to watch that within a couple days of watching this one, and I am curious, do you like Dario Argento's Mother?
First of all,
you do not. Do you?
Which one? Do you mean Darren Aronofsky's Mother?
Sorry, yes, I got my DA.
No, that makes sense. I was just like, wait a minute, you said Dario Argento, and I was about to say yes. And then you said Mother, and I was, no, he did make a movie called The Mother of Tears. Is that maybe what she's talking about? No.
I got my
Darren Aronofsky's Mother is a piece of trash, and that's all I'm going to say about that. It's a garbage film.
That's what I find so interesting because you and I have completely different reactions to kind of like overall like a message that's done cryptically and is irritating to watch. And I knew that you did not like Mother. I remember you ranting about it.
I have all
Facebook.
sorts of problems with Darren Aronofsky in general. Darren Aronofsky has made essentially the same film about 15 times. He has one theme. His theme is somebody becoming so obsessed with something that it destroys their life. And I once asked on Facebook, how many times is Darren Aronofsky going to make the same movie about somebody becoming so obsessed with something that it ruins their life? And Josh Trumbo, a mutual friend of ours, very wisely said to me, probably until it ruins his life. And I was like, God damn it, why didn't I think of that? That's perfect. Anyway, no. No, I'll fill you in some other time on everything I hate about Darren Aronofsky's Mother, which might be the single most. Look, here's the thing. If I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure Darren Aronofsky's Mother, it was at least in contention for and may have won the Palme d'Or at Cannes. And I believe it won, and I'm pretty sure the only two horror movies I know of that have ever won the Palme d'Or at Cannes are Darren Aronofsky's Mother and Juliette Ducournau's Titane, and both of those movies are trash. If Cannes tells you it's a good horror movie, run. Run. Don't listen to those French people at Cannes. They don't know shit about horror. That's all I wanted to say.
I wish... Okay, now I kind of wish that we had recorded this immediately after I saw Lucky for the first time, so we could each have a visceral reaction to a movie, because I remembered that I was pretty sure anyway you dislike a lot of things.
I do. You're not wrong.
I remembered a rant on Facebook, and I was pretty sure it was about Mother, and then I remembered several rants about Mother, and I happened to watch it like within a day or two of watching Lucky, because it was on some streaming platform, and I was like, that's very interesting that this that has a cryptic message and is like doing the same thing,
I didn't find Mother cryptic at all. I understood exactly what he was trying to say, and that's why I hated it.
There's like 10 different meanings, and we can argue about it some other time.
Well, the message I got from it was trash. Anyway, that's another discussion for another time. Michelle,
bonus episode.
Yeah. So Lucky. If you're into slasher movies and into movies that invert some tropes in interesting ways, this is one you might want to check out. Again, be well aware that there are some heavy themes of domestic violence and male on female violence that are happening here, but also understand that it's tackling those issues, and I felt a pretty creative way. Michelle wasn't as taken, but more for reasons where it's just sort of personal perspective, and yeah, this movie is it's just I imagine there are going to be a lot of female horror fans like yourself who have a similar reaction to this film. They're going to be,
and I have to
they're
say,
not going to be
I
horrified because
them.
they're just going to be like, yeah, this is just our lives. Why did it take a movie for you to understand this? And you're right. Why did it take a movie? But
yeah, I have to say that usually when I dislike a movie, it's because I'm like, wow, this is a trash movie and I hate everything about it and it's bad acting and all these other things. For this, no, it's just unwatchable for me. It's very uncomfortable. I did not have a good time either time, but I do respect what the writer and star was going for. I respect it. I just hate it, and I'm glad that people like JD.
I think that's a very fair. I think that's a
Yes.
very fair way to come down about this one. That's lucky, you guys. Michelle, what are we talking about on our next Spooktober episode?
Next, we are talking about slacks.
Slacks!
Two X's.
Two X's. Just double X slacks, not triple X slacks. It's not porno slacks. Nope. It's not extra large slacks. You would love porno slacks?
I would love extra large porno slacks.
Triple extra large porno slacks on the next episode.
Nice. Coming to the stage. Triple X slacks. Keep it going.
Say goodnight, Michelle.
Good night, Michelle.